for questions, feel free to raise the question hand, or you can type things in the chat box. You can write things to all participants, or you can write things just to us as the host. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, and we'll try and answer those. I'll check. So slide about the chat box. Just to check, if you can hear us, can you please press the green tick button now? Yeah, so people seem to be hearing us. Good. Brilliant. Okay. In that case, I'll hand over to Andy.
Everyone, thanks, Juliet. If we go on to the slide, why hold an assessment? Just thought I'd take you through that very, very quickly. Essentially, I think there are two reasons for why we hold the final assessment. The first is, it seems fairly obvious, but we want to basically come to a rounded view about every individual's potential readiness to progress to the level of senior associate role. So if you think your performance assessments so far within the programme, what we've been doing every 6 months or so has been to assess your performance against the level of an associate, how you perform against expectations in that role, and how you've grown in that role. What we're doing here is very clearly thinking about, quite separately, your position and readiness, as I say, to be a senior associate. So it's drawing upon all that you've learned as an associate, but with a different threshold of that expectation, a different performance level, a different kind of set of, not criteria, but a different set of performance against those criteria. So that's why we do it, but we also do it, I think, because at every stage in your progression here at PwC, you can fully expect to have to go through some fairly rigorous and challenging promotion processes, and is a good way of becoming familiar with something that is deeply ingrained in how we do things. We assess somebody's performance and their potential to progress and their readiness to progress. So it's been both necessary, but also developmental and a way of getting used to how to succeed and operate as a firm. So those are the main reasons for holding the final assessment. We'll continue to the slide, but if you've got any questions that come into mind, then please do chip in and tap away as usual. We will endeavour to respond to them as we go along.
I'm going to talk you through some of the logistical arrangements for the final assessment. Your assessment will be on one day, and it will be based around a client case study. You'll get a diary date for one day, and that will be during the week of the 11th of November. You've got the whole week booked out in your diaries, and the way we fund your one day is we have the list of the assessors, and then we send you the list, and we make sure that you don't have any conflicts with any of those assessors. So a conflict could be if you've worked on a project with someone, or if someone is your people manager or your group leader. We want to make sure that you're not sort of in a conflict with those assessors, so you get the fair experience. Another point about the process is you'll be asked for your competency choices, and we'll talk more about that a bit later on and what they are. A bit more about what happens in the actual assessment day. You'll group with sort of between 5 or 6 other associates, and there'll be 2 assessors in the room with you for the whole of the case study, and they'll be watching what you do, interact with each other, and what you come up with at the end. Your group will then make a presentation to someone playing a PwC director, and that's a chance for all of you to go at presenting back, and you'll be asked questions as well by the director. Throughout the course of the case study, you'll have access to the internet and PwC resources, and your slides will be collected in at the end of the presentation. The other end of the day is an interview, and that will be with 2 assessors, and up to that you'll need to provide me with your up-to-date CV and contracts. We'll be sending this pack out with all the dates, so don't sort of worry about scribbling everything down now. You'll have that all. In the interview, you'll be talking about your time on the foundation programme, and also your learning from the assessment day. So that's your time to be really honest and sort of open about your learning and how you found the process and how you found your time on the foundation programme. See that you're being interviewed by 2 assessors, and that's in line with other promotion interviews that go on throughout the firm. With regard to having your CV, the CV is not something that is assessed separately, but we like to give this to your interviewers so they can read a bit about you before they get to meet you. So when you're writing your CV, please don't spend hours and hours making so it's sort of assessment ready. It just needs to be a fair reflection of what you've done over your time on the programme. About earning contract, you really will also have that and ask you questions about elements from your learning track. So be prepared to answer questions about as well. Okay. So the next slide is a more detailed pathway about what will happen in the next few months. Starting today with our WebEx briefing, it's going through, you have your moderation, the date when you submit your CV and your learning contract to me, the date where you submit your competency choices to Lindsay. Then we've got the assessment, which is not too far afterwards, so you should be pleased there's not a big gap there. We have hopefully the promotion to senior associate, a transition, and when you join your new competency. It's pretty straightforward, and this, as I said, will be circulated, and we'll put it on Spark as well, so you should all have that. Okay. Now I'm going to hand over to Andy to talk a bit about how the marking criteria works and how it fits in your moderation.
Okay, yeah. And guys, if you do have questions, please do tap or send them in. Nothing come through just yet. I'm conscious we're moving through at some pace, so if you want us to go over any of the points that Juliet's already covered, do please just send us a question and we'll happily do that. Let me just pick up about the marking criteria. How do we assess whether somebody's got through and what are the rules of the game, if you like? First thing to highlight is that, as you're doubtless aware from correspondence from Kaylee as the people partner, we are proposing a change, we are introducing a change, I should say, to the forthcoming mid-year evaluation process. So we're moving away from the score on the doors approach to actually using a description of performance over the course of the last 6 months, which will play a role in the final assessment process, as I explained shortly. The reason we made that change is largely to fall in terms of the rest of consulting, the rest of the business, into line with them, and also, quite frankly, we feel it'd be an easier process to administer overall than the arrangements we've had hitherto. But it'd be maybe a time, another place for any questions you may have around that. The point of the mid-year moderation and how it impacts upon assessment, as I said, what we're trying to do here is do your readiness to proceed and be a very effective senior associate. So, in definition, you're judged through the mid-year moderation process to be requiring additional support in your current role as an associate. By definition, I don't believe that you would be ready to proceed through to being a senior associate. If you are rated during that moderation process as exceeding expectations or meeting expectations, you can certainly put on assessment. But if you're judged through the moderation process as needing further support, you will, regardless of the outcome of the final assessment, remain in the programme for another 6 months. So we would still want you to go through the assessment exercise, but as I say, regardless of the outcome of that, you would remain in the programme for another 6 months. And that's consistent with practice hitherto, so there's no change in arrangement there. That's the way we've always done it. In terms of what would happen today, Juliet's given you some indication of that, just to emphasise that you'll be assessed by consultants and senior consultants within the business, people who have been thoroughly briefed, many of whom have undertaken these kind of exercises before, expert in it, and they know the criteria against which you're going to be assessed, and they know what good looks like. Important to emphasise already that it's not just their opinion alone that matters. At the end of the sessions, we do have a moderation process, so their thoughts will be tested and challenged by peers Meetings will be chaired by partner either myself or Kaylee. So there is a good set of challenge and objectivity as well brought into the room, as well as what the assessors have seen on the day. Emphasise also the assessors are not told in advance about your length of tenure in the program or your current rating. They are purely simply looking at your performance on that day to form a view about whether they believe, in their experience, you are ready to be a senior associate. I should emphasise there is not a forced distribution. I would love it if everyone passed, and everyone can pass. So as long as you're exceeding or meeting expectations, you will, if you pass, come out of the moderation process and be promoted as a senior associate. And I would say, love it if you all were in that position. The consequence of not being rated as needing support, that you won't be able to go through the final assessment process, as I say. Only other point for me to say at this point is that final bullet point, really important one. If you have any exciting circumstances that you will impact upon your performance day, please let us know before the event takes place, and the sooner the better.
Thanks. Now moving on to how you prepare for the day. We've covered sort of things about what you're assessed against. Advice to say is to really think about how you can form high-performing teams quickly, and how in those teams you can digest large amounts of information and go on to structure PowerPoint decks, and also think about the internal process of how things work within PwC. Obviously think about what you've learned since you've joined the programme, how you've applied yourself to learning, and that will specifically come in when you do your learning interview. The sort of keys in the title there, a learning interview. Think about what you're interested in and how you can develop as a senior associate. We want to sort of that you're going to be continuing to want to develop yourself, so sort of don't be afraid of saying those points to your interviewer. The key thing is to review the GCSEs for senior associates. That's going to form the basis of what you're assessed against. So it really is as simple as showing that you meet the GCSEs for a senior associate. So help yourself as much as you can by making sure you're familiar with those. We'll be assessing you about how you approach the task as well as the outcome. So that links into how you perform as a team, so think about that. If someone's coming up to the assessment for a second time, include feedback that you've received previously, and also sort of come and talk to us if you want any specific pointers or guidance. We have questions come in, so we'll just cover those off. Question about the learning contracts. Do we all of them or the most recent? So we'd like all of them, please. I know it's a bit of paper that hopefully you've kept copies of everything, or if you want to email across soft copies, that's fine too. And there's another question here about, are we moving completely away from the numeric ratings for moderation? And we're just going to use the descriptive ratings. I'm going over to Jo Cox, who we have from HC here.
So for the interim review, as Andy said, we are moving away from the 1-to-4 rating scale, because the 1-to-4 rating scale is used for the annual moderation meeting, which feeds into your bonus. The purpose of this moderation to see whether you're ready to be promoted. So you will not, there won't be a numeric rating, it will be what's in Kaylee's note. And as you said, we will have a separate WebEx to go through in much more detail moderation process.
And so the point touched upon earlier, this is to make sure that we fall into line with the rest of the business. So it's very good reasons, well, we'll explore in more detail in the WebEx in due course, but it's something which I'm very keen to see happen.
Thank you. And we've had a follow-up question about the learning contracts. Does that include evidence? So we can include the evidence from your learning logs. So that's that one. Just get to Andy for.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to pick up one point of how to prepare for the case element of the assessment, because we do get quite a lot of feedback about that, and about whether different styles are going to be more advantageous or differently disadvantaged in that environment. I think what I say is that we know it's a stressful environment. And then everyone be alert to engage in those situations, particularly when working with colleagues. A kind of broad demarcation between introverts and extroverts. I think both groups need to be alert to how they operate. Both can add enormous value through an exercise like this, but both also bring with them some risk, which I think, as I say, need to be alert to. And you will have studied this in your time at Latimer, and you would have been aware of it through various engagements hitherto. And if you would yourself as an introvert, and hey guys, you may find this surprising, but I always come out very highly introverted, and whenever I do these kind of self-assessments, you've just got to be looking at how you can deploy a range of tools and techniques that you will have developed over your time in the program to be impactful in this situation, and particularly to make sure that if you find it difficult or uncomfortable to speak up, that when you do so, you are speaking with impact and authority and making a definitive and positive contribution. I think for people who are more extrovert, I'd be alert you to be careful, please, about not being seen to be dominating the group or not giving other people the opportunity to speak and forcing your view on other people. I mention these 2 points because they do come back as feedback that we do get regularly from the assessors about how some people have struggled in the case study environment, and as I say, really just things to watch out for and how, as you prepare for the event, to make sure that it works well for you and works well for your colleagues.
Thanks, Andy. Now, you've all been sent a link about competency matching, and I'm just going to hand over to Lindsay to talk a bit about that.
Thank you, Juliet. So you should all be aware that after the last assessment, we had implemented the algorithm that we're using now, the stable marriage problem. And Juliet said there's a video on Spark, and there's quite a lengthy Q&A description on Spark, so you can have a look onto that just to get some more information. Essentially what we're asking you to do is to rank your competencies in order of your preference. Now, that time around, that meant that you had to rank 16 competencies because Ops and Strategy both asked for sub-competencies preferences. So you'll be asked to do that and submit that to me by the 8th of November. On the same date, we'll be asking the competencies to set their ranked choices of associates, and we usually ask them to think about double the allocation that they're due to get. The allocations are agreed by the consulting leadership team and are based on the firm's growth plan, the resourcing need, and current senior associate utilisation. And we share those details with you before, and just so you're aware of where the allocations are going this time. If you have any questions around it, once you've looked on the Spark page and watched the video, please do feel free to contact myself or Joe to discuss.
Thank you. So now you've done your assessment, you've done your competency matching, and we're moving on to Tell Day. So Tell Day happens for you all on one day. If you're not available on that day, let us know as soon as possible, and we can arrange a time after the day where we can let you know the result. You have a meeting will take place with one of us in the leadership team and your people manager. In this meeting, you'll be told your competency, your rating, and your new salary if you're getting promoted. So don't pass and aren't being promoted. As we've mentioned, we'll spend another 6 months in the foundation programme, and then we'll go through the final assessment in May 2014. Just also following up on a point that Andy raised earlier, we go through a lot of due diligence on all of the outcomes and all of the evidence. This is to ensure that the recommendations are fair across the whole group. Okay, so we've given you a quick run through the whole process. We've answered the questions that have come in as we've gone along. Does you have any other questions as we go along? No? I'll give you a think of some. while you're thinking of those, we've got a few that have come from groups before you, and I'll send these out to you as well, so you'll have copies of that as well. Things that people have asked before, things like, do you lunch? Yes, you get lunch. What's the dress code? And we've said what you normally wear to work. You may want to err on the small side for the interview. So guys, put a tie or a jacket. It's up to you. You get a marking scheme beforehand. You're assessed against all of the global core competencies. So as we've mentioned, that's all available. So brush up on those. Question out has come in. What does the rating that's shared on Tell Day relate to? So your mid-year moderation rating.
So as Andy said, there is a change. So previously, when it was a numerical rating, a formal moderated rating, it potentially fed into your bonus at the end of the year. That won't happen. This is purely an assessment of your readiness for promotion. At the end of the year, when you get your annual rating, that's obviously throughout the entire year of your performance. Yes, the manager will know how you performed in this moderation rating, but it won't technically feed in the way it has done previously.
Yeah, another question about your new salaries.
Good question. Yeah, so the question is, you said you'll be told our new salaries on the day. Don't we all have the same new salary as a senior associate now? Yes, that's correct. You all will move up to exactly the same salary. What we don't know at this point in time is what that will be, because the consulting leadership team will make a decision based on performance, how into the salary band, for example, we will move you to. In previous years, we've always moved senior associates actually further into the salary band. So there is a step up in salary there. The only thing just to say is, obviously, if you're based in the regions, you'll obviously have a regional salary, as do all our staff in consulting, which is effectively that's to grade 90% of the London salary.
Thanks. Has anyone else got any other questions coming in? We'll give you a few minutes if you think of any, but I mean, if you think anything really pressing after we finish, you can always get in touch with me or anyone else here. I'm sure we'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Questions come in about the bonus.
One thing that's probably confused you all in the past is, because you had two ratings, the ruling on bonus has not changed. The firm will only ever pay out a bonus once a year, and that is July every year. So that doesn't change. You won't receive a bonus in January. You will just receive your pay increase.
Okay. And there's another question. I think perhaps, Anne, could you just go over a little bit more about how the mid-year assessment is working? So following on from the note from Kaylee.
Okay. In all honesty, if we could defer that to the WebEx we're going to have organised, that's kind of not ducking the question, but I think we'd just have a focused way around that and get a lot more detail about how that's going to work, and you know, the move to the new arrangements. But the headline message in that the gut actually don't change at all. So, you know, you still need to get your feedback, you still need to do your self-assessment, you still need to talk to your people manager, the people manager still needs to represent you, achievements, your development areas, the learning points in the moderation meeting. The moderation meetings still continue in the same kind of way, they're still chaired by a partner, and there's still a forced distribution around our sense of how you performed. But we will be moving more to, as we said, to descriptive assessments, not numeric assessments. In many other senses, actually, it's not really much change at all. But as I say, we will have the WebEx in due course to go through that in more detail. I think you'll be chairing that.
She will indeed, yeah. And very shortly about that.
Okay. I mean, well, sorry, I didn't want to kind of sound dismissive there, but I think that the point being for me was, for you, the most important thing to think about at this stage is really about final assessment process, and that's the thing to stay focused upon.
Okay, thanks, Lee. We've had another question about when do you actually become senior associates. So how it works is you become a senior associate on the 1st of January, and then you're still sort of within foundation competency until the 1st of February when you join your new competency. At a month, what we sort of recommend is that you start lining yourself up with work in your new competency. You'll know where you're going, so sort of take that time to meet with your new resources and sort of get ready to start running, I suppose, when you're in your competency. There's a question about when you find out the group that you'll be working with on the assessment. Now, we tend not to on the group very far in advance because obviously these things change, and you need to make sure that you're being assessed by anyone you've worked with, and if assessors have changed quite a minute, it can mean that your group changes last minute. Sort of found that people find that quite unsettling. We moved around, so we do before, but not sort of very far in advance. Okay. Is there any more questions?
If there are no further questions, I suggest we wrap it here and now for the time being. But please, guys, if there's anything you want to clarify after today's WEX, please do come back to the team or to me and just ask us any questions at all. I think the final point from me is to wish you all very well in the run-up to final assessment. As I said, we can 100% success rate here, and I really would love to be able to report that and be able to share that great news with all of you. We're not, creating hurdles for the sake of it. This is an important stage in your career in PwC, which is the reason why we take it so seriously. But we want to see it succeed. So if you do have further questions, please come back to me or to the team, and I wish you all the very best.